Welcome to Psyched for Psychology, a Nystrom & Associates podcast. Our hosts, Michelle Iverson and Brett Cushing, are both licensed marriage and family therapists at Nystrom & Associates. Each week, they talk about all things mental health and therapy, and you get a chance to dive into specific psychology topics that help promote personal development and wellness. And now, here are your hosts, Michelle and Brett.
Welcome to another podcast of Psyched for Psychology. We are glad to have you join us today. And we are going to be talking part 2 of our series, if you will,
on holiday stress. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Are you feeling it?
A little.
Yeah. Where are you feeling it, do you think? That's a good
like
question.
In my body.
Yeah.
Like for me, I love doing progressive muscle relaxation with clients, especially at this time of year. And so it's about kind of targeting different muscle groups and tensing them without hurting, and then relaxing. And then when we do it, we kind of go work from our toes up to our head. And I tell my clients, I do it with them, and we kind of figure out, where do you hold your stress in your body? And I tell them, for me, every time even when I practice it with you, if I thought I wasn't stressed about something, I suddenly realize it's in my shoulders. That's where I hold my stress. And so I tense that area. I relax it. And it's like, wait, maybe I was stressed about something too, even when I was trying to teach you about this skill.
What a great point. Yeah. We don't realize
it.
That we're holding stress. Yeah. And as we talked last time, this season is a season where we are inundated with so much stress and we need to be aware of it. And today we're going to be talking about boundaries. Let me highlight why, again, this time of year is so taxing on us, and we need to be paying close attention to our bodies, because our bodies will tell us, like, hey, pay attention, there's something going on. But we always kind of neglect that. So why is this such a stressful time? Well, relationships. We talked about social last time, about all the social demands. And
managing those expectations. And if you haven't checked out that episode, please do.
Right. Yeah. We need to manage it. And we need to be aware. Like when we think about relationships, we are coming together sometimes with people we haven't seen in a while. And let's be honest, there can be unresolved issues from the past with other family members, and that creates anxiety. We know we're going to see them. It can be the elephant in the room, and so, hey, what do we do about that?
Well, how many times, too, has it been festering and brewing? We might have gotten an argument about something a year ago, had no discussion about it, and then suddenly here we are back in the same room.
Suddenly I'm face to face with this person, and you're like, hey, Merry Christmas! And it's just kind of forcing it out, but we have communication problems. Like, I know people can feel really stressed. What do I say? We don't know how to do small talk a lot. And so there's this anxiety of, what do I say? I don't know how to carry the conversation. There's relational issues related to losses of loved ones. We've had people die that are no longer with us this Christmas. And we still feel that. Even if it was 10 years ago, we can still feel that very acutely. We also find that during this time of year, we can have other stressors related to loss of traditions, family changes, things like that. Crowds, we talked about last time, 68% of the stress people feel is related to crowds and being in line and things. Talking about politics, we referred to that a little bit before. People just feel that urge. I got to put in that little zinger about a political topic. And so how do we deal with that?
Happy time of the year. Let's go ahead and jump into the most stressful topic possible.
Merry Christmas. What did you think about the midterms?
Well, somebody listening has already probably had to deal with that conversation already.
Or they're anticipating it. Like, I know it's coming. So... And then, like we also talked last time, just having to be happy. So there's all of these relational stress points, and then there's the finances. You talked about that last time. We have overspending on food, drinks, parties, travel, gifts, and then underspending. There's this fear of like, well, I should be spending more. I don't have enough this year. We got inflation, like you talked about.
Yeah.
So, but then we have the physical demands. There are a lot of physical demands. We got kids' school events. Some of us have church activities. We have work parties. We have shopping outings that we're going on repeatedly, even if we're doing it online. That's stressful. We have travel. We have overeating. We have overdrinking. And all of this taxation on our body, all these demands, what does that result in? It results in less sleep because I'm doing more. less sleep because I'm anxious and concerned and stressed. I don't have as much time to exercise, maybe, which is phenomenal for our mental health. And so we have less ability to deal with all of these stressors. Mm-hmm. So, as I said last time, there's either too much or too little that we feel is contributing to the stress of this holiday season. And so we talked also about the expectations that are going on in our head. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to talk about, all right, how do we deal not only with those expectations in our head, but how do I go and behaviorally set boundaries mm-hmm. so that I can protect myself?
Mm-hmm. We hear a lot about, advice, recommendations from people saying, well, just set boundaries because it's that easy. Right?
Yeah, what do we even mean by a boundary?
What do we mean by that exactly? And I think that's kind of the first thing, I think, for people is first we have to figure out boundaries. There's no one boundary that's going to be the right fit for every person, every situation, every family. We have to figure out, okay, if I need to set boundaries because the expectations are too high, mm-hmm. the demands are unreasonable or unrealistic, whether it's from other people or from myself. It probably does mean that a boundary needs to be set, but first I need to figure out what should that boundary even be. Right? What is really important? We talked about this a little bit last time. What's really important for this holiday season? What's really important for this family? Even for this year, because maybe this year is going to be different and has to be different from other years before.
So maybe we talk about what is the purpose of boundaries. Mm-hmm. We talk about just set them, but it sort of assumes we understand the purpose. And as mm-hmm. We're sitting, we can trade off offices, your office, my office, and where we record. And we're in my office today, and I have different boundaries here, mm-hmm. right? Yeah. I have a window, which is an interesting boundary. Well, let me back up. First, boundaries are really designed to protect us mm-hmm. and to provide for us. And so my office, I've got a window, and that's a certain type of boundary. It allows me to look out, but it doesn't allow other things to get in. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I know, sadly, a couple birds have tried, and they couldn't, right? Because there's a boundary. I know. Sorry, trigger warning here. Yeah, it is kind of sad.
For birds and windows.
Right, but that's kind of a purpose of boundaries sometimes because... Yeah. I mean, I love birds. I just don't want them
in the office.
In the office.
Yes.
So it's nice that, they can't get in. Yes. I've got a door. And so if we're recording right now and somebody just walks in and says, hey, Brett, I need to talk to you, mm-hmm. that would be a boundary violation. Mm-hmm. They need to knock, and then I need to open the door and let them in. Sometimes people just knock and they walk in assuming like, mm-hmm. hey, and they come in. But isn't that true? Like when we think about how people do that, how birds do that, like people try to come into our space. Mm-hmm. They come into my thoughts. They want to influence my thoughts, my feelings, my behaviors, and what they should be. Mm-hmm. And I need to have appropriate boundaries to protect my thoughts, my feelings, my desires, my opinions, mm-hmm. so that certain people can come in. Certain people I will choose to let in, and other people I want to let out. And so we're going to have all those kinds of people during the holidays, and we need these boundaries, mm-hmm. but we don't really think about it very intentionally. Like, all right, so for this person, I need a window or a screen. For this person, they can come and go as they please. And then there's this person, like, I need a brick wall for a boundary. Not to be mean, but to provide for myself mm-hmm. and to protect myself without apology.
Yeah. And what's really interesting, I think, about the holidays is I think even for people who are so good about boundaries with others and for themselves throughout the year, something happens around the holiday season. Again, I think it gets back to those original expectations, and it's way more tempting for people to feel like boundaries I would typically have now need to go away. They have to, because it's a family expectation, or it's just to be a good person, right? I don't like that. To be a good person, I need to let all these things down, even though they were there to protect me. Or even just kind of recognizing too that we just kind of get all this added pressure. Like, you shouldn't have that for yourself, which again, I don't think is fair or reasonable for people.
And I think what contributes to that is it's sort of uncanny. No matter how much we grow up, whenever we go home, we tend to grow down again. Mm-hmm. And when we grow down, we feel vulnerable too. We go back home, we feel a little bit vulnerable, and there's this anxiety. Well, I know my parents are going to ask me about this and why I'm not doing this yet, or why I'm not married, or whatever. And we feel great. We feel totally confident when we grow up and leave home, but we grow down and we're worried about this kind of interaction because we don't have the boundaries set and we don't make it clear to other people, like, hey, can't come in.
Right. It's about, we talk about that in family therapy, this idea of like we grow up in a system. And even when we get out of the system, if we're back home for the holidays, we might get sucked into those old dynamics. It's almost like little cogs in a wheel, right? And all the cogs are so used to how the other cogs work too, that they run in a particular pattern, even if that pattern is dysfunctional. And the reason why we talk about boundaries is, what if you are a cog who decides to set a new boundary and do something different this year? Sometimes you are the one that now you're operating and moving in a different direction. It can force other ones to have to do the same as well.
And it causes tension.
But it can cause tension,
right.
Even when you're doing a great job of setting a boundary that really does need to be set.
Right, because when we go home, for instance, there's kind of this homeostasis we talk about in our family systems mentality, and it's kind of like the car leaning over a cliff. And the idea is nobody move, because that's the system in place. Nobody upset anything. Otherwise, hey, we could go over the cliff. But when we go home and we set those boundaries, suddenly we're disrupting that homeostasis, and it feels like we're going to careen over the cliff, and it's your fault because you're setting a boundary now. And so there can be resistance to that. But that's why I said to set boundaries and to do it without apology, because other people might insist that you did something wrong or that you need to make up for it, when in fact, you're just trying to provide for yourself and to protect yourself and determine, who do I let in and how much and when, as opposed to just saying, it's a free-for-all. You can come in, you can insult me, you can challenge me, you can question me. So it's important that we do this without apologizing.
So we're already essentially talking about one of our big categories of boundaries around the holidays, and it's with families and family gatherings. And so starting to ask yourself, even, what would an acceptable family gathering look like for me? What would help it to become tolerable if it currently isn't? That's going to start to help to inform what is probably going to be the boundary that needs to be set. Some really common ones most people like to use, because I think they're pretty much bare minimum boundaries, would be things like no yelling, certainly no verbal abuse, and for a lot of people it is no politics. That they need to have that in order to be able to have a tolerable gathering together.
So Michelle, I like what you're saying. What if there's yelling and I'm feeling this vulnerability, I'm feeling anxious. What do? How do I set a boundary then?
Yeah, well, we're going to go over all the steps for that in a little bit. But I think one thing that for sure, we'll talk about how to set those, but I think for sure, and we're going to repeat this a few times, you also want to think about what's going to be the consequence of that boundary being violated. So in particular, I think if we're already at the point where you tried setting a boundary and now somebody is yelling at me, it's time to come up with your escape plan. So I was kind of encourage this ahead of time. What is going to be my way to get away when that boundary is not being expected? Do I have a plan where I could leave the gathering early, set a time ahead of time when I want to go, and I can just get away entirely? Or for some people, somebody else is my ride, so I might not be able to literally get in the car and drive away, but can I get to a really nice quiet space on my own? For a lot of people, they talk about how stressful it is to travel and go stay with their family. Sometimes it's, can we get a hotel instead? Can we create that physical boundary to help give you space and breathing room and an ability to have a safe place to go to if it becomes too much? And again, those boundaries are being violated. Or can other people help you in both setting and holding those boundaries if you need that help?
I like that, especially too, because it is hard, especially when we're starting to create boundaries. you're kind of an island. You're out there, and we do need support. We do need encouragement. We do need other people to help us and to encourage us to do that. I also was thinking of another one too. And I'm sure it's not just my family, but come on, have some more to eat. Or, come on, just, it's the holidays, and you're thinking, I really just don't want to drink that much this year.
Yeah.
I just want to cut back. And other people can be offended, like, what? And so there's this boundary violation that you need to be like us. And what I always tell clients too is like, this is something to think about. Who the safest people are to you, because they're the people who will respect your boundary even when they don't like it or they don't understand it. If they don't like that, you don't want to do whatever for the holidays, but they still respect your boundary. Even if they disagree with it, those are the safest people. And you can allow those people input in your life a lot versus the people who just will challenge that and sort of should on you, that you should be different. Those are not safe people. We've got to create more rigid boundaries.
That's why I love that term chosen family. You'll see this used a lot in LGBTQIA plus communities and spaces. And I think that applies to so many people. This idea of we don't get to choose who we're born into, but you know what? I get to choose and surround myself. And for some people, it's not always, what everybody's going to choose for the holidays. But for some people, they're going to choose, say, I can only spend time and be with that chosen family. That is the boundary that I need to set for myself. And that's what's going to help me to be able to get through that holiday season. It's about knowing you have permission to create your own holiday traditions, especially, again, if the family that you didn't necessarily have to, get to choose isn't helping to follow those boundaries that you really need them set.
Choose. Powerful word, especially as we talk about boundaries. We choose what our boundaries are going to be. It feels as though somebody else chooses that for us when they're actually imposing something on us, but we still get to choose. I really appreciate how you bring that in here, that I get to choose ultimately. And even if people continually violate my boundaries, I'm still choosing to allow that to happen. If somebody just walks into my office all the time and then they leave and I say, to Michelle, I'm sorry, this really stinks that they keep doing that. I might say they keep doing that, but I'm the one who's choosing to allow that to continue. And so that's a powerful thing for us this holiday, because it does feel as though I'm powerless. And so I really appreciate how you bring in that we do have choice. We got a lot of choice. And we don't want to advocate that and give it to somebody else.
And we're going to talk more about, it's going to be assertiveness skills. And I'm going to go through step by step how we set that initial boundary and what we do to follow up to really hopefully ensure that, or give it the best chance that the other person's going to follow through. So, but we can do that with family. Let's think about another category before we get to that. How about gift boundaries?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's stressful for me.
Yeah. What do you think makes that stressful for you?
It's stressful because, am I spending enough? I always feel like I should be notice what I just said. I feel like I should be spending more.
Like we catch those pesky little should statements.
Yeah, pesky for sure. I think I should be spending more. I should have put more thought into this, more time into it. And so it's stressful.
One of my clients a long time ago said, should is a bad word for me now. She's like, I need to consider that to be a bad word, just like I shouldn't say any other bad words.
Just like I shouldn't say any other bad words. Boy, see, there it is.
I know, right?
Again. Yeah.
So it's about catching, because again, that is what creates so much of that pressure on us. The shoulds around how much we should spend, all the types of gifts we should get. And again, we've got marketing and companies trying to sell us, and they love for us to buy into that thought, right? They're going to get more money out of us if we do. And thinking about what are the boundaries we want to set around that. It could be little, of course, spending limits. In my family, we are certainly at the point where we're like, only gifts for kids. We're not getting gifts for all of the adults in the extended family. It's going to be way too much. We have a small enough group of kids where kids feels reasonable for our group? Or can we set some limits around, no purchase gifts, but gift alternatives? What about like homemade crafts, baked goods for each other? One of the most, when I think about Christmas traditions, one of the most kind of special ones for me is my lovely aunt makes these cute little baskets of homemade cookies and treats, and she gives this to all of the members in the family, and we get it every single year. And that, I think, brings so much more meaning than if she just went shopping at the store and picking up what people would like from there. It's things like that we can kind of start to get creative with.
Another thought that crossed my mind, too, is as we were talking about gifts, but it applies to even areas beyond gifts giving, is we want so much during this holiday season. We want to get as much out of it as possible, as much joy and positivity and connection. And just because I want something, I can sort of believe I should have it. And well, we know that's not good, right? We need to still set boundaries on our wants, because I want mac and cheese every night when I go home for dinner. And just because I want that doesn't mean I should have that. But I think this time of year we get that even more confused, because there's so many good things to want and enjoy, and it doesn't mean I should have it. And it means I still need to have boundaries for myself in terms of gift giving and how much money I spend, in terms of time and how much time I expend, in terms of how much I interact with people. Maybe I want to, maybe I don't want to, but I need to be setting certain boundaries for all of those areas.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a great point too. How am I setting limits and boundaries with myself?
Limits are boundaries, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. It's self-care. It is respecting your own needs. We might need to do it with our sleep. I need to get to bed at a certain time in order to actually feel good the next day. I need to engage in basic self-care, in engaging in things like budgeting and finances, because that can be really important this time of year. Boundaries around how I talk to myself, being kind to how I talk to myself. Even around things like, just because we did talk about that toxic diet culture in a previous episode, we talk about eating more around this time of year. Again, that's kind of baked into the culture, and then shame ourselves for that. How am I talking to myself around that? Am I doing it in a way where I'm really being maybe awful to myself, and setting some boundaries around that I need to change the way that I do that self-talk. Those are all things that we can do to set those personal boundaries, again, in order to protect ourselves and take care of ourselves.
So where do we want to go here in our discussion on boundaries?
Yeah, so I was thinking about, should we go over those assertiveness skills? How do I set a boundary? So here's how we kind of do this. I kind of thought of a really maybe common scenario, which is usually Christmas is one day, but if you have extended family, sometimes everybody wants to spend Christmas all together,
all the time.
Multiple places, all on that one day.
Yep. And
if you are like me, I kind of really like Christmas morning, just kind of being at home, right? Like, we celebrate Christmas, and Santa comes to our house. And so it's kind of nice to just kind of maybe sleep in a little bit, although I have a soon to be 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And so they don't really sleep in. But I like the idea of just like being at home, being around the tree, open stuff from Santa, and just kind of relax in the morning. So, but if you happen to have, I've got a family that's really great with that. They're really flexible. We kind of figure out year to year what makes the most sense that year and what kind of works. But if you have a family where it's like, we've got grandparents or some other extended family members who are like, no, we need you at our place on Christmas morning, even though you would really like to be at your own place. Here's a great kind of step-by-step. How do we have that conversation? How do we set that boundary? And kind of the first step you want to do, stick to the facts. In this case, I'm going to, with kind of, without over exaggerating or doing anything like that. I'm really kind of sticking to the facts of, you know what, this year we decided to spend Christmas morning at home, and we want to try and make it a new tradition for our family.
What?
What? Can you believe that? We'll get to what to do if they say what. You want to follow that up with either an I or a we feel statement, which I love these. Something like this. We feel that this will be really meaningful and important for us to do. So that's really focused on, I use the we for the family, but how I would feel, and especially like focusing on the positive with that, if that boundary were to be followed. Now you want to specify your wants. It would mean a lot to us to have your support with this. So I'm saying I want your support with this. Thank you. Ooh, doesn't that already kind of pull you into, ooh, okay, maybe if I were to do this and follow this boundary, she's already telling me how I would be supporting her. Now you want to give a positive consequence if that person were to follow that boundary that you just set. You would be helping us so much to just rest that morning that we would actually likely have more energy to do XYZ, whatever it is, with you on a different day or at a different time.
So why it's in their best interest.
Why it's in their best interest.
Adhere to your boundary.
That there's a positive consequence to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you can negotiate if needed. Like I could throw out, if it really worked for the family, hey, how about we do like a late Christmas lunch instead? Once we have time to have our time in the morning, open gifts, and spend time together.
I love that because that is seeking a middle path option. It doesn't have to be an either or scenario. It can be, hey, we can find a win-win solution.
Now, what if they say but, and now they're going to push and maybe still be upset and maybe still not respect that boundary? First, I want to emphasize for you as a listener, remember, really, when it comes to setting boundaries, you don't have to have a quote unquote good reason to say no. Like I do want people to remember no is a full sentence. Again, too, you can skip all these steps if even attempting to set an initial boundary is harmful, right? I don't want people to feel like you have to do this if even attempting that conversation.
And maybe if we find ourselves justifying ourselves, it'd be like, ooh, I need to stop because I don't have to justify.
But if you feel like, hey, I can do these assertiveness steps, but I do that, I follow these steps, and Michelle, they're still insisting. I think for one, give yourself permission to let go of any guilt. You are setting a very, very clear and a very reasonable boundary. And what you can do next is validate how that person might feel, but you're still going to hold firm to the boundary that you set. Here's the example. Okay, I can imagine it will be hard without us this year for the morning, but I know change can be hard. We will be very happy to see you later at lunch.
I like that. Sounds positive.
Yeah. And then we want to reinforce any positive changes that the other person does. Reinforcement, that is key to seeing positive changes continue. For example, thank you so much for meeting us for lunch. We really appreciated that time we were able to have this morning, and we are all so happy to see you now.
I like that. It really keeps it positive. And I think what can happen is when people object, they'll say, well, we didn't get to see you last Christmas. And so it means so much more now that we'd be together. And so people want to send us on these rabbit trails off of what we really are saying is important to us. And so the way we talk about this in DBT is be mindful. And I say, like, be a broken record and just keep saying it over and over again. Otherwise, you find yourself debating and talking about last year and COVID and why we weren't together, and you've totally lost track of what you're really trying to get.
Yeah, but in the here for now, here's what we need this year. Right? That's all we need to focus on. And I'm so glad, Brett, that you said be a broken record, because that is the final step. When you set that boundary, you have attempted to kind of reinforce and negotiate, but we're still holding firm, right, to the initial boundary that we really need set. Be that broken record over and over again. again, if it's like, hey, I can validate, I can imagine this is going to be hard, but this is what we're going to do. At some point, that person's going to realize, hey, this is a change in the system, right? But I'm going to have to respect that.
And I want to really emphasize something I think that can be especially hard for us when we're trying to set that boundary. Do not apologize. Mm-hmm. Do not apologize. Hey, I'm sorry, because you're almost apologizing for what you want. Mm-hmm. And so these are all great examples of what to do. But just notice, as you do it, you will likely have this urge to apologize for it. And there's no need to apologize for your wants. There's no need to apologize for your needs. Mm-hmm. So try to be aware of that, resist that temptation.
And remember that boundaries without a consequence is really just a suggestion. Like with your office example. Just a suggestion that my door is closed and that you don't can come barging in anytime that you want.
I've got terrific staff. They never do that. But I do think what can also be helpful with us is it's hard to do this. And so what can also be helpful is cope ahead. Mm-hmm. And so don't just plan on doing this and then do it with whoever you need to do it with. But visualize yourself doing this over and over and over and over again. And there's actual studies that show when we visualize ourselves using these kinds of skills, it will come more naturally for us come game day, so to speak. And that's crucial. But just keep going over it again and again and envision yourself being really successful at doing this.
And just like we said in the last episode too, seek help if needed. There's so many people that need help. And this is what therapists do. A lot of people might realize, well, it's just family issues and family stress. And again, this is something I should figure out on my own. But we work with people who are struggling with, like, how do I set these boundaries and what's going to help support me with these boundaries? We do that all year long, but even more so during the holidays. That's what we're here for, to help.
That's what we are here for. And we hope that this has been helpful for everybody here. A special word I wanted to suggest, and I've suggested this a lot in the past. It just means a lot to me. I've heard this once, and maybe in this Christmas season, to help us be more patient during the holidays, be more able to forbear with one another, is ask ourselves not what's wrong with this person, but ask, I wonder what happened to this person, because the anxiety gets high, the stresses are high, and sometimes it brings out the worst in us. And it isn't even about what's going on right now. And maybe we can encourage ourselves to think more generously about each other and, as you've said, about ourselves.
Thank you so much, and we hope you have a great rest of the holiday season. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you as always for listening, and please be sure to leave us a review. While this podcast can't be a replacement for therapy, we hope you enjoyed our discussion today and join us again next time. Nystrom & Associates is always available to those who are struggling. If you find yourself in need of support and help, please check us out at nystromcounseling.com.